This podcast was brought to you by the Magic Candle Company. Relive your favorite theme park memories through the magical sense of smell. Receive 15% off at checkout by using discount code DEBATE and help our channel in the process.
Welcome, everybody, to episode number 2 of This or That, a Disney debate podcast. My name is Justin.
And my name is Chris. Oh, and this is the Happiest Debate on Earth.
Welcome to our Disney debate podcast, where we're going to pick 2 different Disney subjects and we're going to put them up against each other to see which one comes out on top. Last week with episode 1, we were talking about Disney parks related things, the Haunted Mansion and Pirates of the Caribbean. This week, we're going to be putting 2 Disney movies up against each other, more specifically 2 Pixar films. Our 2 topics this week are Toy Story 1 and Finding Nemo. Chris, my friend, which one of the 2 are you going to be taking this week?
So I'm feeling a fight for the underdog. We're going Finding Nemo today. I'm going to start off with saying, though, you're not going to go wrong with either of these movies. And I think I could have picked either one. And this is going to be a common theme with us throughout this this journey of debates, is that there's not going to be a true, I mean, a lot of subjective. I think objectively Finding Nemo has a good fight in it. But I mean, these are 2 of the best. They're 2 of the best movies, not even animated movies. I mean, obviously 2 of the best animated movies, 2 of Disney's best. So I think we really got a good fight between these. I think there's a lot you can say between them. And I'm excited to talk it out here.
I think that's definitely why we picked these 2, is that they were probably the 2 most on par to go toe-to-toe with, where it's not like a Toy Story 1, Toy Story 2 sort of a debate. I forget what the actual numbers are on Rotten Tomatoes, but like these have, I think, 2 of the highest Rotten Tomatoes scores amongst all of the Pixar films.
I believe you're right. Toy Story, if I recall, was a perfect 100. And I believe Finding Nemo was 98, 99.
So, all right. Well, let's wrap up the episode right there. I win with Toy Story 1 as according to Rotten Tomatoes. No, but I mean, when you have 2 films that are in such close ranges of each other with scores like that, like you can only imagine that the arguments are going to be fairly intense, just because like that's super close. And that's almost like, to a subjective standpoint, just a few percent like that. Chris, let's start it off. Give me just kind of why you love Finding Nemo and why that was your pick for today's fight.
From my perspective, so again, I really like both these movies. I had a little refresher course on both of them again. Not that I haven't seen them both hundreds of times. I mean, for myself, Finding Nemo came out, kind of at the time where I should be watching Finding Nemo. I think for myself, that really was probably important for me. Toy Story was always there. Toy Story was something that existed throughout me as a little kid to now. Finding Nemo is something that showed up when I was a little kid. I was excited for it, and I watched it a lot because of that. I think as a little kid, it gave me, the itch for the ocean that I wanted. When I was a little kid, I wanted to be a marine biologist. So I think I'm kind of living vicariously, or my younger self is living vicariously through me today by being able to talk this out here. I
didn't even think about the fact of how much Chris loves fish. Chris has multiple fish tanks. Well, not anymore. We had to get rid of those, but Chris has.
We still have more than one right now.
Chris has had many fish tanks. Chris studied biology in college. Like, this is a very big deal for him.
I did some marine biology courses. I went up to Maine out on some boats to do some real biology stuff out there. So I have a drawing to the a drawing. I have a.
He's got to pull up to them fish.
The ocean is calling me like Moana. My grandma's gonna fly out from under the ground. Jeez. Okay.
Yeah, there you go. No, I think that
I feel
that
the
makes
ocean,
perfect
man.
sense.
I like the ocean. I have a clownfish. I'm a clownfish guy. You know, I don't even want to get into the debacle that Finding Nemo caused for many lost clownfish lives over the years, but still, and we won't talk that. And that's not about the movies, but we're
going to keep it happy. It's the happiest
we're
debate
gonna
on
keep
earth.
it's
Let's
the
keep it
happiest
positive.
debate on earth. We're going to keep it positive today. But yeah, I mean, there's that for me. I don't know, if for yourself you had that same experience.
Yes, I went to school and I studied toys, so this was obviously the choice.
I did think that. I think I recalled you doing some college.
All my toy classes, my toy
classes,
repair classes, just like Toy Story 2 with Woody. We're not talking Toy Story 2 today, or we're not talking Finding Dory today. If those arguments do come into play a little bit, I guess we have a little bit of leeway just to kind of set some ground rules. But
I think you bring in Toy Story 2 and it derails me completely. I don't know if I
would agree. I don't think that's a good.
That.
I don't think that is a good argument. We will keep to the original Toy Story and the original Finding Nemo film. Chris, any other points for kind of why you love Finding Nemo?
So obviously I said why I like it, why I did like it, and why I still like it. I think from a other standpoint of just kind of looking at it from an objective lens, I think the narrative itself is a little bit better for myself. And I said objective, but here we are saying something completely subjective again. I do like the story. I think the story is above all a little bit better myself. I like the story better. I like the visuals of the movie. I'm going to say the visuals are probably the best still out of any Disney movie that has come out. And then I like the themes. I think the themes really knock it out of the park to make it kind of a perfect children's adult movie. I think anyone can enjoy this and appreciate what comes out of it and what they were trying to achieve.
Yeah, I definitely have some counterpoints to some of the points you made. Not everything I am going to necessarily fight super hard on, but I do have some points of why I think Toy Story is a little better. For me, I think I kind of almost have to piggyback off of what you said, and you were trying to turn it into a point for Finding Nemo, which I think is a point for Toy Story, which is the fact that like this movie came out at a period in our lives as like, almost 30 millennial aged guys, where this movie was such an ingrained part of our life. Toy Story has been there forever, like that childhood blanket, like a literal childhood toy. It's always been there. It's been super comforting. It has been such a big part of the Disney universe and the Disney world for my entire life, for our entire life, that I think that it does sort of hold a very high, like legendary status in the Disney world, in the Disney community, that I just don't think Finding Nemo was ever truly able to touch. That's not to say that Finding Nemo isn't like a runner-up and very right behind it, in my opinion. But I think like Woody and Buzz are almost on par with Minnie and Mickey. Nemo, Dory, what's the dad's name? Mervin? Marlin.
Marlin. Marlin.
Kind of being a jerk, but I kind of also wasn't. It makes sense now that you say that. But
no, for sure, and you're not wrong there. I mean, that can't be argued. There is a whole Toy Story land that we get here. And
it's true. There's an entire Toy Story land where there's just one semi-okay experience at Epcot. I don't know if there's actually any other Finding Nemo attractions anywhere else.
However, there's also 4 movies that came out, and a 5th one that Tim Allen is already talking about.
They're signed on. I believe Tom Hanks' brother confirmed that Tom was signed on as well. I don't know if that's like legit or not, but
they're
Toy
going
Story
5.
5's happening.
They're going 5. So they got 5 stories to go with. 5
films.
stories.
There's a bunch of shorter films. I believe there were a cartoon Buzz Lightyear series on Disney Channel or something like that at one point in time. There's a lot. There's even the Buzz Lightyear movie, which
the new movie.
We can debate that on another day.
But you got that too. No, I mean I I think, hey, if we were talking Toy Story as a franchise, sure. I think
Different world.
You got that. I think if you're talking Toy Story franchise versus the Finding Nemo universe, maybe you got that, and I'm okay with that. I can't disagree with that. But I think some of the best characters didn't come until second movie, which that's not fair game in this conversation here.
That's absolutely correct. And I will say that, like, there was a laundry list. I literally made a list of all of the cast just because I really do feel like the cast is top notch and excellent. But as I was making the list of the cast to use in this debate, it started to hit me how many of the characters were introduced in 2, in 3, in 4 that I don't have access to them right now.
Oh, for sure. It's the same with Finding Dory. I mean, that cast is they really kept going with that. You know, they didn't slow down. From Ed O'Neill to Ty Burrell, Sigourney Weaver. You know, they got quite a
Sweet D. What's I forget the actress's
she plays
name.
The whale.
The whale,
right.
Yeah.
So Finding Dory has that cast too. I think they were able to really expand a little bit. But I'm not going to take away from the cast in the first movie too.
So I definitely want to get into that, and let's go cast for cast of both of these films. I don't know if you made yourself a little list or you have any knowledge on the cast, but for me, as far as cast goes, Finding Nemo versus Toy Story, I think Toy Story takes it all day. And I can list everybody right now. Wallace Shawn is Rex, the dude from Princess Bride, and so many other great pieces of work. Don Rickles as the potato head. But like more than anything, right? The big two, Tom Hanks and Tim Allen. And I just think that is a trump card for me in this entire debate. And I don't think out of all of my other points here, I think if I had to pick one point, that would be the one that I would lay down right now. You do not beat Tim Allen and Tom freaking Hanks.
I think I can beat them in a couple.
Do you think Ellen DeGeneres trumps Tom Hanks?
Ellen DeGeneres and Willem Dafoe. Let's
Willem Dafoe.
So we're not going to trump, Tom Hanks, depending on who you are. I don't think the two main casts you're going to trump. I think, the supporting cast, I think we can call them equal. Don Rickles, great comedian. Sure. Great comedian. Wallace Shawn, again, hilarious. They've had their day, and it is not, it may have been in the 90s, even they were old guys in the 90s. They were. Yeah. They were still old guys.
I mean, and that was their lovable charm for the roles that they were playing in the films. But absolutely, and I did want to bring up John Ratzenberger, but you kind of can't in any Pixar movie because it's just it cancels out, right? He's in every Pixar movie ever.
He's in Finding Nemo, and before Ellen got the grief that she got, I think Ellen was kind of up there think of that the most liked Instagram picture of all time. Yeah. What is that? That's an Ellen selfie that we're talking about. So she was up there as top tier celebrity.
And I almost it's hard to like separate the real life stuff from all that, but like if we're thinking about these movies on release of when they came out and the status of these actors when these movies were released, like there's no doubt that Ellen is definitely up in some similar category to, a Tim Allen or something. But so I would agree with you there. In the supporting casts, I agree as well. I think are very sort of on par.
Yeah, Brad Garrett. Think about
Brad Garrett.
That time, 2003 had Brad Garrett. So everybody loves Raymond. That was still huge. Willem Dafoe, most famous for everything that he's ever done. But at that time, the Green Goblin.
He was at the top of his game. Norman Osborn, it doesn't get bigger Willem Dafoe roles than that. Absolutely.
Of course. And even then, Allison Janney doing the voice of Peach. So and she was big in West Wing at the time. She was huge. She's also been in so much. And then Albert Brooks. the Mac Daddy. You know,
Yep.
one of the great actors of our generation. One of the great voices, has some great famous brothers as well here. But I think both the cast really nailed it for the first movie. I think that brings me to the characters.
Sure.
I think there's a good conversation there. I like the diversity that this movie brings. Every character, you can say they're all fish.
Mm-hmm.
They're not all fish. I mean, we got some mammals, right?
Let's
some
get
birds
really yes. Define what everything is for me, Chris.
But I think if you know, just like in the situation, of course, you got toys. You know, your toys, they all have the same experience, so their depth can only go so far. As far as these fish, they all have a different experience. They all come from different places. From Bruce to the fish in the fish tank to the fish in the reef.
Well, I mean, there's some major pushback I got to have there. I will give you the argument that maybe it's similar because we're dealing with toys versus fish as a collective. But you got to look at the cast, man. Not one of them looks alike. There's at least two main characters in your movie that are literally the same kind of fish.
They don't.
But there's not two of the same. Once we get into Toy Story 2, there's the Mrs. Potato Heads and things like that. But literally every character in Toy Story is a different toy.
It's a different
toy.
They have a completely different
experience. It's not the same experience. Buzz Lightyear literally thinks that he is a space ranger trained to fight galactic. Yes, but then you have to go with all of the references to Rex being a dinosaur and all of the stuff that he's talking about related to dinosaurs. We have all of the jokes and the puns that are made for potatoes, like Ham being a pig, a piggy bank, like. They all have, the army men. Dude, the army men. Those are the most different.
Okay, so they're maybe the experience isn't the right word, but they all exist in Andy's bedroom. They all
exist in the ocean, aside for the few that got scooped out of the ocean into a tank.
I think our scale is a little bit different from Andy's bedroom.
And if we want to go with that argument, right?
Biomes of the ocean.
If they are in a tank and that's why they're different, you got the toys that are over at Sid's house, and we'll get into Sid in a little bit, but Sid's house toys are very different than everywhere else. You also have the aliens from Pizza Planet who live in a completely different realm and element, being in a claw machine. They don't even know what the hell's
going on. They have no idea what's going on. They just show up.
They're just like the what are they? The seagulls? Who are the dudes? The mine. Those guys, right? Like they don't know what's going on.
Those were seagulls.
Whatever. What are they?
No, they were seagulls.
They were seagulls.
Get
out of here.
They were seagulls.
Yeah, come on, man.
Yeah.
So I think, if anything, if you want to make this argument, I would say that they are equal in the fact that, like, you're meeting different characters, and while they all share the same kind of commonality of the world that they live in, they're all very different. Like, I will give you that all day, every day. There's very few similar fish that we're coming in contact with. But we got to make that same argument for the toys too. Fight me on that one. I don't think you can.
I think I can. I just don't. I don't have the words to say that.
Then you can't.
I think they do. You know, if I had a few more seconds, which I just ran out of time, I'd be able to be all over that. I think as characters, I think, you know, they go through a lot of growth. You know, and I think that shows their depth more than anything else here. I think, you know, you have some growth from Woody and Buzz.
Major growth from Woody and Buzz.
And then the rest of the characters are kind of just there.
Well, you also have the whole aspect of the fact that the rest of the group of the toys really start to hate on Buzz or hate on Woody because he's in that place with Buzz where he's not a fan of Buzz. And they're essentially against Woody because he's feeling that way on Buzz. And then they have to kind of turn back around when they see that, oh, wow, they have made amends. Woody can grow. So can we. We need to reaccept Woody back into our lives. So while the individual ancillary cast, we'll call them, all the other toys, don't have their own sort of like specific journeys. They all, as one group, I think, have a journey as well. So you have
I think
Woody,
you kind of bring
Buzz,
that,
and then the rest of them. Yeah,
you bring that to kind of the theme, one of the probably the biggest theme of the movie in itself, which is friendship and kind of overcoming jealousy. What would you say that for Toy Story?
I would say that's probably it. You know, I don't know. You could like define that in 100 different ways. Is it, you know, growing up? Is it jealousy? Is it sharing? There's all these like little tiny mini themes in there, but all of those are very applicable, and they all go through the same sort of journey, you know, but it's in just different ways. We can probably, the most different is probably Buzz, and I don't know exactly how we would define his journey from essentially like thinking he was one thing to losing his identity and then being okay with who he is. And that's also, I guess, sort of similar for something like Woody, where he has this identity as Andy's best friend. Buzz comes in and threatens it. And then he has to realize, like, just because there's new people coming into the world, it doesn't necessarily take away his importance to Andy. It's just adding in new family, new friends, other people. So there's definitely like the whole thing, I think, is kind of overcoming jealousy from those. And then where Buzz's story lands is a little bit different in just kind of overall acceptance. But that's, yeah, I would say those are the main themes of Toy Story.
Yeah, and I mean, acceptance in general is a big Pixar theme.
Sure, yeah.
I think in Finding Nemo, we explore that to some degree. We explore a few different themes, not only the friendship, the teamwork aspect that it takes to overcome certain challenges, you know, the weaknesses and the strengths that each character has to overcome certain things. So we get that. We get the friendship, like you're talking with Toy Story. You know, they all kind of had their own skill that they brought to the table there. I think Finding Nemo has a few other themes that just come from the fact that this is, by definition, an epic. This is an epic story. It's a hero's journey, you know. They overcome, overcoming fear is a big one. I think Marlin is terrified of the outside world.
Sure.
He lives in this reef, which, you know, little side note for you is how clownfish exist. They don't travel 2-3 feet away from their home. They like to stay in a very so that's a little biology that they kind of brought into the movie here. But there's that. I mean, Marlin was a terrified little guy, you know, and I don't blame him. He saw his wife and hundreds of children get brutally murdered by a giant
one of the
barracuda.
most sad probably opening scenes, maybe outside Up or on par with Up. But
so
man,
it was a real Bambi moment, and
yeah,
that was a decision by the director to kind of add in a little. I don't know if it was last minute. Initially, they were going to do more of like a flashback thing where they were going to look towards that, but he decided to add that in at the beginning there, which I think really sets the tone for the movie. I personally think that really hammers in how important Nemo is to Marlin. Obviously, he's all he has in this world. You know, how important is this fish where he needs to protect him from everything, and he also needs to learn to let go. And I think that's where that kind of parental love theme kind of comes into play too. You know, and protection and letting your kid kind of spread their wings a little bit. So there's that. But yeah, I mean, the taking risks itself, I think, comes up in a lot of different ways. Trusting other people comes up in different ways where Marlin, you know, when they're about to be swallowed by the fish, he has to let go. Or not the fish, the whale. You know, me talking about fish versus mammals. Here I go. But he's about to be swallowed by this whale, and he trusts in Dory. Dory says, let go. And
all the different fish that they meet, like he has to learn how to make friends and how to trust other people, being somebody who is just completely isolated. So yeah, absolutely.
So I think you can, and I mean, look at Nemo's little fin. It's little for a reason, you know. You know, it that kind of is there to tell you that he can overcome a lot. You know, you had Gil with his scars and his broken fin too. So it's all about, you know, so you can take a lot from the movie as far as I think just the themes that they were trying to push towards the audience there. I think they really were pushing a lot. And I think overall there's a lot more that I personally can take from Finding Nemo over Toy Story. Toy Story seemed, okay, we have to save Buzz and we have to learn how to be nice. You know, we had to learn how to be friends.
I mean, it's a little more deep than that, but sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's people out there that say, you know, how it's they can call it a tearjerker or what, but I think this one has a lot more heart to it, and I think that's where it kind of captures me a little bit more than Toy Story does from that perspective. I
think it goes for some of the more obvious tearjerker moments, sort of just kind of throwing in the Bambi, you know, of it all. But I definitely think that as far as like story structure go and narrative structure goes, I feel like Toy Story actually kind of takes the win there. I see where you're coming from, that there are some more apparent themes that they're trying to push, just from the number of characters that they're sort of interacting with. Nemo's journey versus Marlin's journey and Dory's journey. I was going to almost put Dory and Marlin together, but Dory's kind of going on her own journey all her own, and then almost every other character is as well. But more or less, the narrative structure of the overall movie is sort of simplistic and sort of, I don't want to say like that you can guess everything that is going to happen in that movie, but it is sort of a very standard like buddy cop-esque movie. The two of them go off on a journey to find Nemo, and we sort of hit the beats that like you would normally hit in one of those, where Toy Story is a very similar sort of idea that Buzz and Woody go off in one direction. But every moment that you think the movie is done, or there is a clear logical place for the movie to end, it continues on just a little bit further and goes a little bit farther without sort of like ruining the pacing of everything. Essentially, you would think that just like in a standard movie like this, they would do a scenario where they would go to Pizza Planet and then getting home that would be it. Once they leave Pizza Planet, that's the end of the movie. But they end up at Sid's house. Once you escape Sid, that's the end of the movie. No, they have to get all the way into that minivan right next to Andy, and then onto the new house and sort of setting up, I don't know if they were actually setting up a potential sequel with sort of getting the dog as the final little joke in the movie. But like, at every instance, you think the movie would logically end in one of these points, and then they continue the narrative on without sort of messing up the pacing, which I just think is brilliant. It's narratively, that structure is beautiful.
I think they are different stories. I think they have a lot of similarities in a sense. I think you're not wrong, though. I mean, Toy Story, when it came out and it was written kind of as, I'm sure it was storyboarded, you know, as
of course.
a you know, it was probably written while they were doing the storyboarding. They kind of came together and kept going and making this movie that works and that visually looks good. Whereas his Finding Nemo was based on, you know, the director did the screenplay and they're kind of going from that, which is less traditional to the typical animation movie style and writing process. So it's a little bit different, but I think there's different stories. I mean, Find Nemo is kind of, like I said, your traditional epic. It's an odyssey of sorts where they're hitting up different monsters every 100 yards. You know, they're showing and they're coming into a different situation from running into Bruce and the sharks to the jellyfish to the whale. So they're kind of coming up against each individual challenge and finding their way through it in a different way every single time too, which I think is neat. Whereas, yeah, I mean, I'm not going to argue that the story of Toy Story is bad because it's not. And,
yeah,
and like I said at the beginning,
neither one of these movies, it's hard to argue bad story. It's not.
There's no
not
argument there. I mean,
yeah.
It's just not bad. Like I said, I mean, the main antagonists in the movie, they're the same thing. They have the same antagonist, a vicious child. You know, we have Darla, which is about to make Nemo belly up, And then we have Sid, who is going to take Woody's head off and put it onto Buzz's. I don't know. He's
gonna blow up Buzz with a rocket.
Blow up Buzz. He's gonna send him somewhere. Who knows how that would have ended up?
What's really interesting is that they both do have, and I do want to touch on Sid, because I do think that Sid is like one of the greatest, most iconic like Pixar villains. Like, I feel like it's just, that is so pitch perfect to that world and we're like, not saying that a little girl who's overzealous with her new pet isn't a perfect sort of foil for a fish plucked out of water, but like the whole Sid bad guy thing, I think, is just such a good villain in this movie. But more than that, I don't even think these are either of the villains of the movie. The villains of the movie is just essentially life. Like, that's just what it is in both films, and that's what Pixar does so well, is that it is just the journey of life that is the sort of issue, that is the problem, that's the obstacle in the road. It's not ever necessarily that one person or that one thing, like a big bad in a Marvel movie. No. Which I think is just, it's the Pixar genius.
Well, they all get in their situations because of their own choices there.
Yeah.
They wouldn't be running into these situations if they followed the rules and played nice.
Yeah.
So they're their own worst enemy. They get themselves in these situations they need to fight themselves out of. But yeah, I think you're kind of right on there, is that they're dealing with their own situations here. I think the main antagonist, though, I think from just the story perspective, I think it's funny with having Darla there. Like you said, you have this little girl who just shakes the bag too much, and she's the villain, and she's the one that could end Nemo's life. You have this whole little world, little microcosm that you're looking at, and the worst possible thing to happen is a little girl, which is very funny. And Sid, is he even a bad kid? I know they kind of pushed 100%. This.
Did you see he mutilated toy after toy after toy?
I call that learning.
Everyone around him.
Learning. He was experiment. He's a young engineer. The things he was able to create, I don't necessarily know. Besides,
I don't know if that was his motivation versus just like death and destruction, because that's really how it plays in the movie.
For him, the toys weren't living. They weren't creatures of, his dog. He wasn't, if he was beating his dog and tearing, his dog apart.
Well, we just didn't see anything. We don't know what else is going to happen. And it's a slippery slope, my friend. You start off with toys. The next, you're finding little animals in the woods. It's not a good scene, dude. It's not a good scene.
The science does not support that. Next, you're going to tell me is that video games make kids.
Well, Sid was playing so much Grand Theft Auto. It was just apparent. It was so apparent. Yeah, of course. No, I'm just kidding.
He was a young engineer who was trying some things out. What little kid doesn't like fireworks? I don't know how he got that in the mail. I don't know what websites he was looking at, because there's nowhere you're shipping that in the mail.
That is true. How did he obtain the big one? How did he get the rocket? Like, how does that happen?
That's still not clear. That is still not clear.
But it would be interesting. And the only pushback that I have here is it would be, and it's not confirmed. Like, we have the Pixar theory. We have a lot of these other like supposed Easter eggs that we have seen Sid in other Pixar films and beyond. And I believe he just ends up working for Pizza Planet, but like, maybe that's not Sid. Maybe Sid is a NASA or SpaceX or one of these other space program engineers, and he literally is sending spacemen into space. So, all right, we'll maybe give you this.
He could be. And we're looking at that, ultimately through the perspective of the toys.
Sure. Yeah.
I don't think, just like we're looking at Darla from the perspective of a fish.
Yeah.
And what happened to the previous. So, who knows what could have been the situation. Maybe she was going to take him home and put him in a nice 300-gallon fish tank, and he was going to
probably
be
tap
chilling
on that glass and shake that thing up.
Maybe so.
Maybe
But,
Nemo would have had a great life.
I'm just like arguing for Finding Nemo, kind of giving the benefit of the doubt, and really pushing for things that maybe I shouldn't be pushing at.
That's fair. It's all conjecture at this point as to
Of
where
course.
where the stories would have ended up if they continued. I have a bunch of other arguments that I do want to get into, but first I want to make sure that all of our listeners are aware of our sponsor of today's podcast, today's episode. Please go check out the Magic Candle Company, and let's hear just a little bit more about our special offer with the Magic Candle Company.
Magic Candle Company themed fragrances allow you to capture the smell of your most cherished vacation memories. Set sail on a swashbuckling pirate adventure. Transport back to the tropical atmosphere of a beautiful South Pacific themed resort. Relive the excitement of a fun-filled day spent on your favorite dark water rides. Soar above a California orange grove. Embark on an exotic river cruise adventure. Recall that first bite of your favorite frozen pineapple treat. Escape to your favorite rocking chair overlooking a murmuring creek as you soak in the splendor of the great outdoors. Enjoy the scent that's beloved by foolish mortals and happy haunts alike. Or even recapture the nostalgic aroma of being a kid again, watching your favorite Saturday morning cartoons. All of this and more is just a click away. Visit magiccandlecompany.com and escape to your happy place today.
Receive 15% off. Discount code DEBATE.
And we're back. No, I don't know. I don't know how we'll throw it back in.
And we're back.
And we're back. Let's continue the art. Hopefully you guys like those candles. Go check them out. We have some shipping right now to us, and we're gonna do a couple reviews on Instagram. So make sure to go check out our Instagram and our TikTok. It should be dis or that pod. Dis or that pod on both Instagram and TikTok. Make sure to check out YouTube as well if you are listening to us on audio on your favorite podcast listening service. All right, let's dive back into some of these other arguments. We've hit some of the bombshells, and I could go over things. I have a point here that's lists like, it's the first. Toy Story is the first one, so it makes it the best. It set the tone, and I do think that there's elements of that that's real.
It's the
but
first.
I don't want to hold
first.
that.
But what was the first Pixar movie to win an Oscar for best animated feature?
This is why I'm not bringing it up, man. There's
one,
a first for
There was one that did, and it went by the name Finding Nemo. First best animated feature. It was also nominated for I believe 4 or 5. Ended up winning the big one though.
Okay.
Ended up winning the big one. It took home. So
yeah, there's always a point and a counterpoint to something like that, right? The first one to win an award, the first one to be developed and to come out there. So I don't necessarily want to fight that fight.
You can have a lot of conversation, and we can have a lot of debate, but unfortunately, they are separated by quite a few years still.
Yes, absolutely.
So
yeah, I don't think it's necessary to get into that argument. But if I am going to throw out one of my big bad, I feel like I have another just killer argument point that you
have an ace in the hole here.
You cannot even remotely debate that I haven't thrown out yet. And it's one man's name, Mr. Randy Newman. Randy Newman, the music in Toy Story, untouchable. It's untouchable. I think, like we were talking about with the music in last week's episode between Pirates of the Caribbean and Haunted Mansion, I think you have some reasonable music in Nemo. It's very atmospheric. It works for the film. But as far as the pirate's life sort of thing, there's no touching Randy Newman and his score in Toy Story.
You have the best Disney song of all time, arguably.
All time.
You do. You've got a friend.
Definitely one of the best Pixar. In probably all of Disney.
Let me throw another name at you. Thomas Newman. Randy Newman's cousin, who did the music for Finding Nemo.
Oh, I didn't even know that. That's freaking hilarious.
He did.
It's unbelievably hilarious.
He did. And it's different. It's different. There was no, we have the songs in Finding Nemo. and in Toy Story. You have the
Yes.
songs. You Got a Friend in Me. What's that other song that they play there?
There was a few of them. There's one, and I'm blanking on the name of it, but it's when Buzz is trying to fly for the first time, like through the window. There's a beautiful tune there, and there's a litany of other ones, and obviously we can, we're not going to get into the rest of the series, but obviously You Got a Friend in Me. No touching that tune. No touching that song.
And like I said, I'll give you that one. I think that's kind of the big song, and that one itself takes the cake. You got lucky with that one. You got lucky with it.
Lucky. Well, they were very smart in hiring the man himself, Randy Newman. I don't want to call Randy Newman's cousin a knockoff by any stretch of the imagination, because the music's fine. But I think one of my bigger points, even than the actual song itself, is just the vibe and the feel that's created throughout Toy Story. Is so specific to Toy Story. And not that Finding Nemo isn't specific to Finding Nemo, because it fits the film perfectly, but it's not a feeling, and it's not a soundscape that I can necessarily pull up in my head at any point in time. I think another good example of another Pixar movie that does this really well. Oh, wow. Is this actually another did Randy Newman do Monsters, Inc.?
I was going to say, you're saying the
Monsters,
same
Inc. is
thing.
another one.
It has the same feel. The music is the same. And Randy Newman...
I wouldn't say that it's the same, but I think
you
has
get a very
unique flavor.
Very similar feel or flavor to the Toy Story feel.
This is a fish in the ocean scenario. It's maybe the same region of the world, but I do think that those are very different fish.
But
Monsters, Inc. and Toy Story. Very different.
A Randy Newman tune when you hear one. And I'll say that much.
That's fair.
That goofy piano, that feel, and it works. I mean, Randy Newman did the first 4 Pixar movies, so he was kind of cranking them out. Sure. Finding Nemo kind of goes against the grain and says, let's do a little bit more soundscape. Let's envision ourselves under the ocean. We haven't even touched visuals yet, but I can't pick a better movie that matches the visuals to the music as well as Finding Nemo does.
Toy Story.
Finding Dory. Can't touch Finding Dory. Finding Dory.
I can't pull up any reference within my brain, even after watching Finding Nemo very recently, of the soundtrack. I think that the Toy Story vibe, whether you want to say it's close to the other Pixar movies or not, fine. I won't argue that. That's not what we're arguing here today. But it is a very, very specific flavor that at any point in time, that if you tell somebody Toy Story, whether they're recalling actual music or just the feeling that music gives you, they instantly are in that world.
You go to You Got a Friend in Me.
And you go for the overall vibe. I would say you go for the vibe more than you go for the actual tune. I think that there is a very specific sound texture that's happening there that doesn't happen in any other movie, specifically Finding Nemo. And it's not the same for Finding Nemo, where there's a soundscape and a texture that I can kind of recall at any time.
If you are someone that really likes Finding Nemo, I was watching Finding Nemo the other day, and they were playing on the jellyfish, and Katie's like, "Is that the jellyfish scene?" Just from hearing the music.
Sure.
The girl knows it. She can
another
tell
biologist who knows Finding Nemo really well probably remembers a specific scene from the movie. What music would be like
if it were an underwater Pixar movie. That's not part of it. But yeah, I mean, I think you get the feeling. Of course, you don't have the hit. And I think you get the feeling, but I think it's just different. I think it's different, the same but different kind of situation here. You get that feeling you get that happy, I'm a toy kind of feeling from Toy Story. I would argue that I feel that same way in Monsters, Inc. In fact, I feel like those have very similar vibes to them almost.
We're going to have to do maybe even a specific music fight between Monsters, Inc. and Toy Story.
I think so.
Just because I want to prove my point that they are different.
Yeah.
But I will not concede the full point that I think the music is better in Finding Nemo, but I'll concede a little bit in the fact that the vibes work for those films very specifically. But I still think that Toy Story has a more specific texture and flavor than Finding Nemo did. I think it was a little bit more generic, but that's just me.
That's fair. We'll have
Toy
to
Story stan.
we'll have to talk with Thomas Newman here and see what he thinks about that.
We're gonna call the Newmans up to
We're
guest
gonna call
star
them
on
up,
an episode, and we're gonna have
see what
them
they
battle
think.
it out.
Have them both play a little bit for us and see
that be
what
great?
you can pick out there.
Oh man, I'm gonna ask Randy
cool.
to play short people. I don't even care about this. I want to see if he'd play that in 2024. Let's move on to some other points. What other points do you got, Chris? I got a couple more that I'm itching to fight, but I want to make sure you get the opportunity to lead on the next point.
Yeah, I mean, for me, and like I said, I think this is kind of tough to discuss because there were so many years that came between them. Mm-hmm. But I think visually, Finding Nemo was not only groundbreaking, I think it holds up to the best of what Pixar's throwing out today visually. Toy Story kind of has its age. You can look at it. It doesn't look bad. It's the first CGI animated film. Mm-hmm. This was it. You had Toy Story. For that, it looks good. It looks fine. It looks like the first CGI animated film. Finding Nemo is over 20 years old, and I'm not seeing that age there.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I'm just not seeing it. I think it looks incredible still. I think what they did with that feeling of underwater, I know they did. All the animators took a marine biology crash course. They did learn a lot from before they started animating.
It makes so much sense why you chose this movie. I understand.
I
was a little shocked at first. So he doesn't want to take the 100% Rotten Tomatoes movie? Okay, layup for me. Now
so we'll
I
take
get
the
it.
98.
Now I get it.
You know what?
I think all day, every day, I will give you the point that it holds up really well. It holds up extremely well.
Incredibly so.
For CGI standards, it was very, very good for the time. It's very, very good now. There are points in Toy Story that do feel early CG, but the whole thing that I was thinking about today, and it is one of the points on my list, the CG that they're doing, and this is something that a lot of great franchises have done when they delve heavy into CG use. Me and you have had extensive conversations about Star Wars and how George Lucas has used very stylized CG to
so you're going to go with it's a style.
To a certain degree, I would just say that if you look at that movie, things are done very well where that early CG look fits that sort of toy narrative. There's no doubting though, just because if they really loved that style, they would have stuck with it for all four movies. And you watch Toy Story 4 and there are some scenes in Toy Story 4 where you have glass or rain on glass. You have grass, you have all these different elements that look literally real. They are unbelievably gorgeous. So
they really started, they did have that style for sure. But I think it was also the best that they were putting out there at the time.
Yeah.
And granted, I mean, it's the 90s. For something to look that good in the 90s, there's a reason that, visually it still actually looks so good, whereas other CGI from that day does not hold up as well.
Not even remotely. I'm trying to think of some of the other movies that came out at the time. Shortly after, we're not talking about Bug's Life, but Ants versus Bug's Life, and just looking at the difference between those two films and how Ants does not hold up anymore.
For sure. You look at the movie DreamWorks Shark Tale. They're not creating that same underwater scape. And these are two movies that, you can compare very, very closely. Sure, Bug's Life, Ants, different art styles, but I think specifically you're looking at Shark Tale versus
not even a little.
It's no contest there. It is such a
and it's
far
not even
better
just a
looking
Pixar
movie.
thing because the first Shrek is definitely right in that ballpark of sort of that range of early-ish CGI, and they nailed it. So it's not just Shrek. A Pixar secret thing. It's just a time, attention, and care, which they definitely did for Toy Story. But I'll give it to you that Finding Nemo looks leaps and bounds above Toy Story. But I have to say, watching that film literally just before we started doing this fight, it still fits. It still feels good. And that was kind of one of my worries, because I did know that the CG is a little lacking. And one of my worries of like rewatching the movie again was like, am I going to not like it because the CG doesn't hold up? And 100%.
No,
not
it does.
the case.
And it doesn't look bad. I think it doesn't look bad, especially because they are toys.
Yeah.
And they had a very easy ability. And I don't know if that's kind of why they initially went with this whole Toy Story, because they were able to, I mean, let's be honest. Let's look at Sid for a second. Let's look at Andy and his sister. The people aren't animated.
They're rough.
They don't look great. And you can say that's kind of the style they were going for. The focus is the toys. Even the faces, they're kind of just generic people faces. There's nothing super special. Sid has his look, but the focus is the toys, clearly. And I definitely think that's why it does look as good as it does, because again, they're toys, and you have that ability to give that almost plasticky look that just naturally came from the CGI. Yeah,
that's, you know what? You nailed it right there. It's the plasticky look. That I think 100% is like why that looks so good. I would maybe make an argument, and this is better for like somebody in CG world, but like they moved leaps and bounds above that to get to Finding Nemo. But because things are underwater, there's like a sheen and a shine to some things where like I think the people still look leaps and bounds above the people in Toy Story, like in Finding Nemo. So there's no argument there at all. But like they don't look as good as they could in some other Pixar films. So I think that there is some like Pixar does a very good job at like playing to the strengths of whatever their technology is at the time and matching it with their story. So yeah, absolutely.
It could
you
be,
nailed it 100%.
Even Toy Story 2, you have what's the guy's name in Toy Story 2?
The Al's Toy Barn guy?
Yeah,
that guy?
Al.
Yeah.
When did Toy Story 2, what was 99? It was only a few years after.
I would imagine a handful of years, but yeah.
But it was definitely a few years before and I think even that Al looks a little bit better as so they definitely came within a few years. They made a big change with that leap. For sure. And it almost, when watching the original Toy Story, and I'm not knocking it necessarily, it's what it is, and you kind of love it for what it is. But they I think kind of dropped that Pixar ball a little bit when making those people. It kind of looks a little scary at times.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there was a Pixar ball to drop at that time. I think that was the first we're creating it, so I understand what you're saying. But yeah, they do not look great. And you can kind of even bring that into Woody and Buzz, who are the more like people-like, human-like toys. But it is that plastic thing that I think that saves them and makes them look so much more believable than the actual humans do. One of the other things that I think, like, it's kind of subtle and it goes a long way. And I think people, whether you're thinking about an animated movie or a video game, I think graphics are the big thing a lot of people think about, and how real does it look? What are the graphics of everything like? But one thing that's sort of in that realm, but not many people pay attention to it, is like how they're animating those characters in the way that they're doing that. I was watching Woody and I was watching Buzz, and there's this unique experience that I had at like midway through the film where I was like, wow, I am watching Tim Allen and I am watching Tom Hanks. And I think that Toy Story does an unbelievable job of like capturing some of the mannerisms and matching up the actors to the characters within that movie. Not saying that they're not doing that for Finding Nemo, because I definitely think like there is no person better than Willem Dafoe. Like matching character for character, like my God, like that's perfect.
Yeah, I mean, you can see the age in Marlon's eyes. It looks like a tired Albert Brooks.
Yeah,
so I definitely get it. I get it, but I can see how you're seeing that in Toy Story.
I think it goes a little bit further, and maybe it's just because they're people. But it that's unreal to me, that I'm looking at Woody and I am literally seeing Tom Hanks within that character. And for something that was done as early in CG movie history, that's incredible to me. Absolutely incredible. That I think adds to that animation achievement.
Oh, it definitely was. I mean, there wouldn't be a Finding Nemo if there wasn't Toy Story. You know, we wouldn't have had that. You know, so I agree. I think everything they did with that movie had to hit it spot on. If Pixar came out, you know, with a very mid movie, a 50, 60 on Rotten Tomatoes or something like that, for instance. And we're using Rotten Tomatoes as our gauge currently. No,
just because it's easy numbers.
That's not, maybe the critics, you know, go to. But if 50 to 60% of critics were saying, you know, this is a good movie, and the other 40 were saying, you know, giving it a bad review, I don't know. You know, I don't necessarily know if we would have even had what we got out of it, you know, out of Pixar and out of the future that Pixar's had. Yeah,
they had to kill all of those first films.
And they did. They kept hitting. I mean, we had Toy Story, Bug's Life, Toy Story 2, Monsters, Inc., Finding Nemo.
I'm trying to think of the first, and I don't even think any of the Pixar movies I think that there are some Pixar movies that have flopped, but I'm trying to think of
more so than anything else.
Yeah,
I believe the first flop, if I'm not mistaken, was Cars 2.
Yeah, which is an interesting case because there's a lot of theory on why so many Cars movies are made. Like Cars 1 is a great film. People will give that up to them all day, but Cars 2, Cars 3, Cars 982, there's a lot of theory on just how much merchandise Disney moves and that it's worth pumping out another film for it. So I get why those things happen. As far as like original IP, like brand new story flops, trying to think of one, and the only one that comes to my mind is The Good Dinosaur. That was a film I could not get through at all, and I know that they had a lot of production problems in that, but it's hard to pick out a flop from Pixar just in general.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in general they just haven't been where they were. They haven't been as dominant as they were in the early 2000s, late 90s. Yeah. And we were really missing that. I think even then, and I don't want to say it, but I think in a sense you've kind of lost that. It's a Pixar movie, you know it's going to be the best next movie. You know, you say that now. You say it's a Pixar movie, and I don't know if there's a lot of people that are really going to say, oh, it's definitely going to be a hit. I think you need to kind of wait and see how it goes before you kind of sell your soul to it. And, but really, I mean, I don't think they've been hitting it. And I don't even think that's, me saying that. I think that's very obvious just to how these movies are being reviewed. I don't know if it's rush or the story writing itself. Again, there's some absolute bangers in there still.
And I think we're still going to see
a perfect movie still.
Absolutely. Yeah. I know it wasn't as well received, but Soul for me is a great film. I love that film. And I think they're going to continue to pump out banger after banger. There's just a lot of other good Pixar-like studios that are around too that sort of like
even Disney Animation Studios.
Yeah, so Pixar. There are some movies that are literally, I have had people go, "Hey, did you see the new Pixar movie?" That's not a Pixar movie. Like that is a Disney animation movie.
Disney Animation,
a Illumination movie. That's something else. So it's definitely all over the map now. Circling back to our discussion of Toy Story versus Finding Nemo. I don't know if you have many other points or not, but I have a really good one that I think is pretty interesting, and it's something I didn't think about until today watching Toy Story again. In Toy Story, there's some pretty high stakes for the toys revealing themselves as being sentient beings. They have to constantly pretend to be toys. They are toys, but they're not sentient. They have to make sure that whenever Andy's coming, that they drop to the floor and they pretend to be lifeless objects. Where in Finding Nemo, we literally have scenes of them interacting with, humans to a certain degree, as much as they do. but they're just still talking in their fish language and still being fish. There's no hiding that they're fish. There's no hiding that they communicate in the way they do. So there's a lot less stakes in that regard. I liked the extra element that there are some stakes to these toys being found out. And that does some really interesting things. And it really all hit me in one of the final scenes of the movie when they finally defeat Sid and Woody starts directly talking to Sid. So it's not one of these things like Finding Nemo where they're speaking to each other and they can understand each other, but the humans can't. The toys are alive.
So you're saying,
and they are legitimately alive. And then they start freaking out. So
is he speaking through his pull tab?
So this is the genius. This is the beauty. He's speaking to Sid through his pull tab. So it's not the pre-recorded things that Woody would normally say. So he's saying things directly to Sid through the pull tab voice. But then the final moment that really freaks Sid out, he turns and he looks at Sid directly and speaks from his actual voice, and it freaks him out. And it was so beautifully done. And I was like, I knew that scene was there, but I didn't feel the impact of it until I watched it again and really comprehended the fact that they set this whole thing up where they can't be found out by the humans, and then they use that to defeat their enemy in the movie. And I think that is one of the coolest elements of that film. And like we're talking about, there's so many similarities between Finding Nemo and Toy Story, where it's there's these creatures, whether they're toys, whether they're fish, that are sort of in their, this is like the Pixar thing, right? Like Bug's Life. It's these things that don't normally talk and we're personifying them and they're in their own worlds. But it's so cool that the fish are fish and they're in their own bubble, but the toys are living things and they can freak the heck out of any human being that they want to if they so choose.
That's fair. I mean, that's a fun, kind of thought, I guess, that you had there. Yeah. I mean, I don't think that's an argument for it. I think it's cool. I think it's just it leads to the narrative in a different way. It creates the story in a different way.
Great element for these, where we're talking about similarities between these two movies. It's an extra level of depth that Finding Nemo just doesn't have.
I guess that you could say that about something else too. I mean, I feel like there's.
I would love to hear something else. What's an element of depth that Finding Nemo has that Toy Story just doesn't have, simply by the narrative of them being fish?
Yeah, I mean, it's in the same situation though. I mean, granted, yeah, they're talking and they're not, but I mean, it's just a different story. Toys don't talk at all, so they had to create that. Yes, sure, they don't talk. Yes, you got me there. But I mean, there's also, flowing blood in these creatures, they're moving. There's life that they have here. It's just different. It creates a different story because of that. That is kind of the big thing. That is Toy Story, that these toys are alive. And so there's no Toy Story without them coming to life, for one. And there's no Toy Story if they're interacting all the time with humans and they, can't be. So what happens?
I think it would have been interesting.
What are the stakes though? If they find out they never really say that or specify why they need to.
Yeah, it's never really touched again in the rest of the series. I don't think that they have ever come into one of those sort of scenarios. I know a lot of people have been throwing that out there to be Toy Story 5, where Andy somehow comes in contact with them again as an adult and realizes that they can talk, and how do we deal with that? I don't think that's going to happen in that movie.
I think there's going to be something big. I don't think they would sign on for a Toy Story 5 to big name actors when, they don't need to. Toy Story's had its run. I think they are signing on Toy Story 5 because it's going to be really important. I think it's going to be big. I don't think they're going to mess this up. Kind of the final, because I don't think there's going to be Toy Story 5 it kind of rounds it out. I don't see there being, more reason to keep going with the Toy Story. It's like at that point, it's even 4 and 5 are pushing it when you had 3 and
a lot of people
so
have
perfectly.
Said that. Yeah, a lot of people have said that like Toy Story 3 should have been the end, and that's where they should have capped it off. I have a theory that essentially Toy Story will continue on, and it'll be interesting to see if any, because we have had Toy Story actors pass away. So it'd be interesting to see if Tim Allen or Tom Hanks were either just done with the role or, God forbid, they pass away, what will happen to the franchise. But I really think that these movies will be pumped out, spaced out well enough. I think there will be purpose for each movie, but they'll be coming out for as long as millennials are alive. Because if you have watched the track from Toy Story 1 to Toy Story 4, it speaks directly to all of the kids born in the 90s, like to a T. All of the kids born in the late 80s to a T. It speaks to exactly where they are in their life perfectly. So I think that the next film will be something about parenthood, parents of teens, something like that. It'll be some way, shape, or form related to something like that, where it's going to fit directly within like our lives' narratives, just for how close the first 4 Toy Story movies fit.
I'd be interested to see if this is, I would think this is going to be the last of Woody and Buzz, though.
And that would be interesting if they essentially took the franchise in not a different direction, but like continued on with new characters, kind of like Marvel does.
I can see that happening. I don't know if I think they could do something like a different title, subtitle, a Toy Story story or something like that.
A Toy Story story. Yeah.
I could see them doing that.
It would be very interesting if they turn Woody into like Iron Man and in an end game sort of scenario where we're going to send off Tony Stark into the sunset, and then there's going to be a new cast of characters that are going to continue on for the next generation of the Avengers films.
It could be. I mean, Toy Story is kind of what started it all. So if we want to think of it like that, I cannot see a Toy Story 6, Toy Story 7. I think that's, even Toy Story 5 is really kind of pushing that envelope. I don't know has there been any other animated movie that's ever done that?
Doesn't Kung Fu Panda have like 9,000 sequels? I don't know. I'm trying to think of something, but I do think it's in a league of its own.
I don't think they even got to 4. I think there's 4 Kung Fu Pandas, if I'm not mistaken, but
no, I totally understand what you're saying. 5 is a lot. I do think that they might try to squeak out 6 to try to be a trilogy and a trilogy to try to like hit those marks. But it would be interesting to see. And it might end up being that scenario where Woody and Buzz ride off into the sunset in number 5, and then there's a number 6, but it's a semi-new cast of characters. And they can kind of see how that plays out if they want to continue on or not from there.
I guess we're gonna have to see, and that it goes the same. I think for Finding Nemo. I thought after Finding Nemo, how are you going to make a sequel to this? It's not set up for a sequel. And then Finding Dory, there we go. Now we have Dory's story. Really, not a lot of focus on Nemo. Obviously, the main character is not Nemo anymore. We have a different story happening, and so
are there any plans for a third in that franchise?
Not that I know of.
Anything? It would be interesting to see where you go with that. If you go back to the well and we find a scenario where we have to find Nemo again, or are we going to be like, finding Crush? Like, who's the other character that we could go find in Finding Nemo?
That's it.
Trying to think. Yeah, like Crush would be a good one, I guess.
I think that could be fun. I really think a Crush spinoff. Crush was voiced by the director himself, Andrew Stanton.
Oh, okay.
So he did the voice of, I think he directed it, or he was the writer, or both. Maybe both. I'm going to say both. If I'm wrong, that's fine. But I think it was both. But regardless, I definitely think a Crush movie could work. I don't really know if you have a lot else for anything
like who else
Any
could
other
they find? I
fish,
mean,
yeah.
unless it's marlin, unless you're like trying to find that, but finding marlin doesn't seem as catchy as like
No,
finding the turtles or however they would brand
no, and,
that,
and
you know.
the Finding Dory was fun too. And now we're going to be talking about these things. I'm sure at some point we're going to have to touch on these movies. Maybe
Yeah,
Toy Story 2
definitely.
versus Finding Dory. But I mean, Finding Dory is kind of a bit of a double meaning there. I mean, you're finding, and I think Finding Nemo. I don't really think Finding Nemo is about finding himself as much. I could be wrong. I don't really think that's big. Finding Dory is all about finding herself.
Yeah.
And also literally trying to find this damn fish in this this crazy aquarium here. But it's cool. You know, I think it's a fun movie. I thought it was a good next movie because you have a different environment. You're kind of focused on all these zoo exhibits. But as far as the third movie, I think they kind of did it. I don't think it needs a third movie. I think you kind of wrapped it up with the two of those, and I think leaving it as those two would be just fine.
It's just begging for a trilogy, so it'd be interesting to see if
They always
somebody green lights that at some point, right? But
I'm sure it'll happen.
At some point, it's just inevitable. I have a few other final points. I know we want to wrap up eventually here. One of the things that just very quickly that I want to touch on is just the iconic toys within Toy Story. So many toys and so many just IP and things that you're already just so attached to and in love with, from, you know, a general sort of thing like a piggy bank to Mr. Potato Head to the board games that are in the back. I think that those are so fun, and it's so cool that not only do we have these iconic toys, but then we created multiple iconic new toys through the movie itself. Woody and Buzz were not real toys to begin with. They were created for the movie, and now those themselves are iconic toys. I also really loved how the toys were integrated and used within the movie. I think it's so cool, and that just kind of goes to like the environment sort of thing that we keep talking about, of how the fish world is used for fish in A Bug's Life, how the bug world is used for the bugs. The fact that there are things like an RC car that we can use, that there's that little microphone speaker toy that Woody uses to talk to all the toys.
Oh, yeah.
That we have the army men that can do recon.
No, it's a lot of fun. I think they had some type of partnership with, like, was it Mattel or Hasbro or something?
It had to be somebody big to get, because there is literally the words battleship and some of the other big names
and you
in
have,
there.
I mean, Mr. Potato Head himself. You know, you have a lot of these toys that have existed, you know, for a long time. So I think you're right. I think that was obviously crucial, though, to the story to have some of these.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, I don't think you get that with Finding Nemo, but again, it's different. You have a different situation here. I think even from a toy standpoint, you do not, that movie, it doesn't feel like it was made to sell toys. You don't have toys on that because there's really not a lot of, instead kids went out and bought a bunch of clownfish that can't survive.
It's almost the reverse scenario where everybody had like relationship to those toys going into Toy Story, where when you leave Finding Nemo, you now have a relationship to these specific types of fish and sea creatures. Like,
you do, and I think
that is a genius move.
In a way, it's and like go back to the My Pirates conversation. It's insanely educational for kids. I think you got a lot of kids interested in biology. You know, I think
you love a good teaching moment within your Disney IP.
It needs to happen. If you have, and we were talking about things, we're going to talk a lot about things that are geared towards kids because we're doing a Disney podcast.
He wants them all to be smart. I like it.
So I mean, you're teaching here. I mean, you got a lot of learning points in a way that. It kind of, I think, just sparks the imagination. Some things that are exaggerated for the sake of you know the story, but also get you thinking. And I mean, you have so many different environments, from the discussion about how they live in the anemone. You know,
anemone.
You know, that's fun. I mean, you see how these different creatures interact together in certain situations, from, you know, going down to the trench with the anglerfish. You know, that's a cool little thing that you're learning. You have the jellyfish. You just have a lot of different places where this is what's happening because of this, and you're taking something out of it. You're learning about the ocean. You know about the ocean. You know about more about, humpback whales than you do when you walked into the movies. So
that's fair.
I think
we learned how to speak whale in the movies.
You learn how to speak whale.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You learn that whales eat krill. You learn that they are filter feeders, and so it's interesting. It's really really cool to see how this
educational in such a well packaged way.
Yeah,
I get it. Yeah,
and I think that's just a different part of what makes that, and it gives that a little bit more depth to there. You have the educational side that in Toy Story you don't really get that, but you're not looking for that in Toy Story. You
Sure.
are looking to play with toys. And that's okay. That's okay. But it's just a different
He's
situation.
saying my movie is mindless junk for children.
No, and then you have the turtles, going down that
like the jet stream esque. They're riding the current, the underwater current.
They're taking the current there, and that's like a real thing that these turtles do to, so they're using a lot of real
many educational aspects to it that literally in Epcot after the Nemo ride, there's just all of the like everything you learn from the movie is in this one little aquarium based in Epcot.
Yeah.
Like it absolutely makes sense.
It's super cool. And, I think that's another really cool aspect of Finding Nemo that I don't think you get in a lot of different movies.
It would be interesting to sort of put this up against A Bug's Life and see if we have something a little more equivalent, because those seem a little more equivalent from that realm.
Yeah,
I think it's been a while since I watched it, but I don't know. Yeah, I don't think so.
To some extent, you have the caterpillar becoming a butterfly. You have
the ants working in tandem.
But even then, they're not. I don't want to say the genders of the ants matter, because that doesn't necessarily matter for the film, but like I know everyone always says about Finding Nemo, and that Nemo should have turned into a female, and
because that's how that works in real life.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
And I don't know enough about that specifically. I don't know. I know that's if you have clownfish, one is going to become the dominant, and one's going to turn into the female if you get them small enough. I don't know if that would happen with their own young, but I don't know enough not to say that either.
That's a deep conversation. This is like a how does space travel work in Star Wars kind of conversation. Maybe we just don't think about it.
And that's something we can talk about next week, and we can really get into it when we're discussing Rise versus the Millennium Falcon ride. So,
which is our next debate next week. All right, Chris. Final points. Do you have anything? I have one final point that I got. Do you have any final arguments before we wrap up today?
I think I left it out on the table. I think my last thing was going to be the educational aspect, and how, I think this really was inspiring to a lot of kids. I honestly bet if you look at a lot of kids that are in that field right now, and you go to them and ask, what was a big moment? I bet that Finding Nemo was big or had some type of impact for them, for sure.
It makes a lot of sense, and it makes a lot of sense why you chose this. Myself, as a musician, as a DJ, one of the most impactful movies that ever came across my way, School of Rock. So I get
School of Rock.
I fully understand. Yeah, 100%.
And then you just said Soul too, so
Soul as well. That's a great
one. We can have those conversations, when we do Soul versus Zootopia or something. We'll
Zootopia.
Be able to go there, but.
My last final point that I want to leave off of, one of the things that I think it's one of these other big three, I think, points that I have for Toy Story 1, setting the tone and delivering these to the world.
Give it to me.
This is now within the world's psyche. It has definitely one, but maybe even two of the best catchphrases in not only any Disney movie, Pixar movie, but just movies in general. Number 1, to infinity and beyond. And if you want to make the argument, we can even do there's a snake in my boot. But infinity and beyond, I think, is one of the greatest catchphrases of all time. It perfectly sets the tone for Buzz throughout that entire movie. And it's another one of these sort of just unbelievably iconic lines for Disney, for Pixar, and just the world in general. And I don't think any Pixar movie has been able to top To Infinity and Beyond.
I agree. I think it's a cool thing that Buzz says, and he has a story. I do think, and I was not going to give another counterpoint here, but I do think Finding Nemo kind of shows up here. I don't think they're left out of the battle with
what's the quote?
Just keep swimming.
Oh,
that is huge,
dude. You know what I thought you were going to say? I literally thought you were going to be like, he touched the butt. I thought we were going to do that one. I did not see the just keep swimming.
To touch the butt, but just keep swimming, okay. I think is relatively iconic in itself.
I did not consider just keep swimming. I will not concede my point, but I will say that it is pretty darn close as far as iconic Pixar lines, iconic Disney lines. Yeah, that is very high up there.
We'll take it.
Good job. Good job, man. Good fighting today.
I think for two movies that I think are pretty high up there, that are again two of the best. I think we're able to talk it out pretty well today. I think there were good points for each. I think each had their time to shine, and I'm excited to see what other people would say in this situation.
Very much so, which is why we all want you to go to our Instagram right now and go check out the polls that we have set up there. We're going to be doing polls for every single one of these debates, of these arguments. We want to hear what you guys have to say. Make sure that you go to the polls and you guys vote to let us know which is better, Finding Nemo or clearly Toy Story. But as well, make sure that you're commenting on our thumbnail post for this episode on Instagram and on TikTok. Make sure to go to both of those and give us your opinions. We want to hear from you guys on why these things are more important to you. Like, do you have that same sort of feeling that Chris has for Finding Nemo, for Toy Story? Do you feel the same way as Chris? Are you a biologist? Are you a marine biologist? And Finding Nemo means everything to you.
And we want to hear. We want to talk about these points with you too. I want to hear these. I want to bring these up. When we're having conversation going forward. At the next episode, or down the road. So these are all important. I want to hear them. I also want to hear ideas too. If you have an idea for something we should battle it out over, let us know. Go
into our YouTube comment section and let us know what you want some of our next fights to be. Next week, we are doing a Star Wars battle. We're going back to the parks, baby. We're going to be doing Rise of the Resistance versus Smuggler's Run. Stay tuned to see who takes which and which one of those comes out on top. But we want to hear what our next few battles should be. Go into the YouTube comments. Leave it there. As well, remember to hit that thumbs up button and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can check out this podcast anywhere that podcasts are available. So if you prefer listening rather than watching, make sure to follow us on your favorite streaming service as well. Once again, guys, my name is Justin, and we are joined here.
I am Chris. And
by our buddy Chris.
And we are signing off today.
The happiest debate on earth, everybody. Hopefully you guys had a good time.
The happiest debate on earth.
We will see you next week for our Star Wars debate. Take care, everybody.
All right, buddy. See you later.
See ya. What's our like ending thing? You need like an ending, may the force be with you esque like
how you were saying take improv classes.
This is where we would need.
This is where we would need them. Yeah. I don't know. We gotta come up with a good ending. Something like To Infinity and Beyond.
To Infinity and Beyond. Everybody.
There we go.
See you guys next week.
This podcast was brought to you by the Magic Candle Company. Relive your favorite theme park memories through the magical sense of smell. Receive 15% off at checkout by using discount code DEBATE and help our channel in the process.